Hello LPL and League of Legends fans alike. It is August 5th, 2023, and the LPL summer is over. The season is complete. There is one tournament left in the entire world, and that'll be the International Worlds Tournament, arguably the biggest event in esports of any game. And your number 1 and 2 seed are already secured from the LPL, with your spring champion, MSI champion, and now summer champions, JDG, representing the number 1 seed from the most difficult region to win in League of Legends in the world, are going to Worlds as the number 1 seed, as they just had a grueling 5-match series going up against LNG. We'll talk about that a little bit, and then we have our 2nd seed, Bilibili, who have qualified through championship points, which means LNG now, after this long 5-game series, have to go down, turn around, and tomorrow play a best of 5 against a competitive team in EDG. We'll talk about all this stuff, preview who I think gonna win, and think how LPL will do early on going to Worlds. And so let's talk about this massive 5-game series between JDG and LNG, because if you've paid attention to any of my previous videos this week, I talked about the strategy going into this tournament, and it was exactly what we thought was going to happen. JDG were going to play to their strengths, which is the way they won Worlds, or MSI, the way they won Spring, and now the way they've won Summer is by their team fights and their fights around objectives. There is no better team that plays around objectives or 5v5 fights than JDG. And on the counterpart of that, we knew what LNG was going to do, because they just beat the 2nd best team fighting team in the world, Bilibili, by winning individual performances and being better in the early games and winning those side lanes and those not 5-on-5 fights. Now, when I say JD Gaming wins games through team fights, 5-on-5, and objectives, I'm going to break that down a little bit more for you with a couple of stats for the entire series. So this is stat lines for the entire series. JDG had 41 total kills, LNG had 50. That's right, the losing team had more kills. Turrets taken, JD Gaming had 23 turrets, LNG had 23 turrets as well. So they had the exact same amount of turrets that were taken, and JD had less kills. But this is where it gets really interesting. The Dragons, battle for the Dragons, JDG had 11 total dragons throughout the series, LNG had 8. Barons, JD Gaming had 5 Barons throughout this series, where LNG only had 2. So when you look at the total amount of kills, when you look at turrets, you would think that LNG would potentially have the edge in that department and win the game. And to an extent they did. But the fights around these objectives, the ability to win these 5-on-5s and then take more dragons and then take more Barons, that's what wins you the game. Now, there is a little bit of a salty taste in my mouth. You taste that a little salt in there, because I kind of wanted LNG to win, not because I was against JD, but because I like Bilibili, and JD Gaming has really kind of made Bilibili's success overshadowed because they've performed so much better. But this last game 5, it came down to an Elder Drake. It was the only game that got to the point where it was really going to come down to the Elder Dragon, and there was just one misplay by Zika, if we're going to call people out. He kind of got picked off, and it just was a lock that JD were going to get Elder and then win the game. It's kind of like penalty shots to me in soccer and in hockey, where I feel like you're kind of playing a different game to see who wins the other game. It's kind of hard to explain. I'm not a big fan of Elder in solo queue, and I really am not a big fan of it in professional play, but there was a reason they added them, and it is all within the game. So good on JD for prioritizing that and winning the series and the summer and winning the season overall. On an individual player's performance, look, I've become a fan of Scout throughout the entire season. I think he was really underappreciated by the fans and the viewers, and if you watched my last video, there was kind of an anime villain art being built between Scout and Knight, the 2 mid laners for the 2 teams competing in the finals, and I gotta be honest, in this performance, it might not show on the stat line, but on the impact of the game itself, Knight was just better. Knight actually got the MVP for the entire series. He performed just as if of all players he was the best player. He actually had the most kills for the entire series with 17 kills on him as the mid laner. He didn't have more damage per minute. He didn't have more CS per minute than Scout. So statistically, he wasn't performing that much better. In fact, he only had one more kill than Scout, as Scout had a better KDA overall, but his impact on the game, the times when he got those kills, is what really separated them in this series and made them perform. As I've said so many times, JDG just wins because they know when the fights matter and they know when to actually prioritize fights over other objectives and other things throughout the series. So congratulations to JD Gaming on winning, performing better than any other team in the LPL for the majority of the entire season. But what does this mean for the remaining teams and the remainder of the LPL representatives going to Worlds? Well, I'm glad you asked, because as we spoke about earlier and I've said throughout the entire week, JDG is your #1 seed, which means the #2 seed will be the team that has the most championship points. That is in fact Billy Gaming. So your #1 and 2 seeds are locked in for the LPL. However, there's still 2 more teams that they get to send, because they can send 4 teams this year. LNG, due to the fact that they have lost their finals and they were not the championship point holders, they now go down to a qualification match between EDG and LNG, obviously, and the winner of this match qualifies to Worlds as the 3rd seed. Now, there's one more match between Top Esports and Weibo Gaming that the winner of that will play the loser of EDG versus LNG, and that winner will qualify as the 4th seed. I'm gonna put up a graph where I hope you can see how I'm trying to explain that. So let's talk about those series for a minute. Lastly, let's talk a little bit about the regional finals, as these games start right away, as the first one is tomorrow morning, where LNG will be playing another best of 5 going up against EDG. Now, this is a EDG that qualifies as the 4th seed of the playoffs due to their championship points, because earlier in round 3 they actually did lose to Top Esports, but due to the points that they got throughout the entire season, they qualified as a higher seed, because the winner of this first match of LNG versus EDG qualifies as the 3rd representative of the LPL at Worlds, and the loser gets to play in one more qualification match against the winner of Top Esports and Weibo Gaming. In this series, specifically this first one tomorrow, I'm expecting LNG to win. I would not be surprised if EDG do pull up the upset, because prior to the playoffs you could have said this series would go either way. EDG has not played competitive League of Legends in quite a few days due to the fact that they were eliminated in the 3rd round. That's really early on in the playoffs. As far as the other series, I do expect Top Esports to beat Weibo Gaming. I think Weibo Gaming had a good performance throughout the year. I just think they kind of got hot early on in summer, and they were able to get some championship points and qualify as one of the lower seeded teams heading into the playoffs. If we think back, they had a really disappointing start to spring, but also LNG also did. So it doesn't really matter how you start, it really just matters how you finish. So hopefully we can see some good League of Legends, as we will see the 3rd and 4th seed crowned as the representatives of the LPL going to Worlds here in just a couple of days. But that's it for today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed your time watching this video. Hope you enjoyed the LPL. We're gonna have lots of LPL content coming out in the next couple of weeks as we prepare for Worlds, as I do want to give my overall review of the LPL, talk about the teams that aren't as successful as other teams, and just give my overall thoughts on League of Legends as an esport moving forward. So thank you guys for hanging out with me. I'll see you later.